and welcome to Bass Relief, Kelham Island's answer to sport relief, and hopefully this will give people something to do and a little bit of creativity whilst we're all locked down in our houses. So from Friday, these clay tiles will be ready for collection from AD's Deli. And I'm going to just quickly run through what you can do with them. What we're going to ask you to do is make a bas relief tile. Now, a bas relief tile is a form of sculpture. It comes originally from basso relievo, which is Italian, which just means low form, basically. So we're going to carve into these, and we're going to create some designs in the tiles. And I'll just give you a few little tips as to what you should do. So what you will receive what you can take away is a piece of clay. This thing is not that thick, so you need to be fairly careful with it. It will come on a cardboard base, and it will be on cling film, and it will be surrounded by cling film. Now, one thing that you've got to make sure is that whilst you're working on the clay, you keep it as sealed as possible to keep the moisture in, and that is very, very important. So with that in mind, a few things to look at. Leave the clay tile on the membrane. If you put the clay tile, when you finish with it, wrap it up onto the card, all the moisture will seep into the card. Equally, if you can, and if you've got gloves, if you can find any, wear gloves when you're doing this, because when you're working on the tile, the moisture from the tile comes into your hands. So what we need to do is keep the tile moist, and whilst it is, you can work on it for up to 2 weeks. So, and with that in mind, when you put it away, if you've got a spray, such as one of these, a garden spray, you can just spray it very gently, just to keep the moisture inside. So that is really most important. If you finish it in a couple of days, then it's absolutely fine. But whilst you're working on it, you need to keep it moist. So in terms of the actual what you can do with it, you can do any design you like. We don't mind whatsoever. Our thoughts are that eventually all of these can be put together in one seamless piece of artwork. So what we'd ask you to do is try and keep the tile in the same shape. Now you can do that by just getting just a length of batten, and just making sure at the end of when you're working on it, you just tap it on the edges to retain the square shape. That will make it a lot easier when putting the sculpture together at the end, so it will be a sort of seamless piece of work. In terms of what we're going to do, I'll just show you an example. This is the only tile I could find around here. We're in Mark's clay workshop, so I found this one. It's just a tile with a design around the outside and a floral pattern on the inside, which has been very carefully worked on. As you can see, it's not that complex, but it's completely up to you what you do. If you want to do something figurative, then that's absolutely fine. If you wanted to do lettering, then that's okay, but I would suggest that lettering is quite difficult to do, and it will take quite a long time, because you need to work as, say, a stonemason would work. You need to actually carve the letters in, as opposed to just drawing on the clay. But you can do that. You can combine a design and lettering if you want to. It's completely up to you. So, a few things about actually working with the clay. It is quite thin, but it will be okay, providing you don't go mad and start hacking it around. All right, you can carve into it to about half its depth. All right, and I'll show you an example of that. So, if we have the clay tile in here, and if Ben, you can see this, I could go about so deep in terms of putting a mark into the clay. Okay, so you can see that's about halfway into the clay. So if I make a shape there, I could start to lift that shape out if I wanted to. Okay. And what you can do is, with the excess clay that comes out, okay, you can then put that back into the work and actually build up areas around it. So you could place that on the side, and you could then work it in. So not only are you carving in, but the excess clay that comes off, you can actually put on top to lift out the form as well. The only thing I would say is, if you do that, make sure you attach whatever you bring out very, very carefully. If you just stick it down gently, When it dries, it will just fall off. So you need to work it into the clay so it is seamless as possible. Now, the other thing I would suggest is, if you're working to build it up, don't go any further than the half of the depth of the clay. So that is about the maximum that you should actually bring it up to. As I say, you can do any design you like. What clay is very good at is taking things like imprints. So you can use anything that you can find to put some sort of texture and pattern into it. So the one thing I've just looked around Mark's studio, and I've just found a golf ball. Really nice pattern. So if you just press that very gently, you can create a really subtle pattern. The clay will take a pattern like that really, really nicely. So you've got something really, really delicate. You can use anything you like to create that. Now, in terms of what you use to actually manipulate the clay work with, obviously I've got some clay tools here, but you can use absolutely anything. So if we've got this, and this is from Mark's clay class. We've got knives and forks. You can use the end of a pencil, anything at all that will do the job. So whatever you find is easiest. Okay. So in terms of what to do after you've created your design, as I say, if you've made your design, try and square it up so it's nice and square. And if you're happy with it, you can let it dry. Okay, and all you need to do with that is just take the cling film away and put the clay tile directly onto the cardboard base. Now it will take about 3 days to dry out entirely because it's quite thin, all right, and it will go to what we call leather hard, and then it will dry out fully. Now I've just looked around Mark's studio and I've just found this piece here, which is dried, but it's not been fired. Now you can, at this stage, if you wanted to, still work on it, but you would need to work on it with sandpaper, or if you etch something into it. Okay, but be careful at this stage, because if something you've done breaks, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't glue it back together as such. So if you did want to work on it, if you did want to sand it down when it's completely dry, then that's absolutely fine. Okay, once your tile is finished, you just leave it to dry, and what you'll need to do then is return it to Adie's shop just on its cardboard base. Don't take it off of the base because it is quite delicate. Okay, if you were to drop it, it would certainly snap. But if you leave it on the base, it will be absolutely fine. Take it back to Adie's shop. If you could do that for Friday week, so that is a week, Friday or Saturday, I will then collect the work from Adie's shop and it will be fired. That process will probably take a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then we will return the work to Adie's shop. You'll get information, details about that, and you can take it back and then you can paint it. And I'll give you more information about how to paint and finish off the work at that stage, and we'll record another video. So if anybody's got any questions, you can always post them on the Sundowners and I will ask them, or you can just give me a ring. And while we're here, just when all of this is all over, I'll just take a shout out to, we do clay classes here, or Mark does clay classes, which are very, very popular. That's on a Saturday morning for 2 hours. You can learn how to use clay in all its forms. You can also learn, if Ben, you look over into the corner there, you can learn how to use potter's wheel and create anything that you like. Mark is very, very good at covering all aspects of clay work. So a little shout out for that, and to also thank Mark for letting him use his studio. So,
can we still do that with social distancing?
What's that, the clay class? No, the clay class will start again once everything else starts. At the moment, kayak is closed down. We're not running any classes, but we'll let everybody know as soon as possible when it starts up again. Thank you.